Right at the very heart of the biblical story, there's this ancient prophecy. It's one that's so unexpected, so uncomfortable, but so brilliant that it changes how you see everything that comes before and after it.
And this isn't just some clever question to get you thinking. It's the challenge that's posed by a single chapter of Scripture, a chapter that really forces a conclusion about God, about us, and about what love really truly is.
So let's set the stage. Hundreds of years before the cross, in a time of huge anticipation, the prophet Isaiah starts writing about this figure. And this figure would defy every single national and religious expectation they had. He described a Messiah that, frankly, nobody was looking for.
To really get how shocking this was, you have to remember the context. Israel was desperate for a conquering king, right? A military powerhouse who would just crush their enemies and restore the nation's glory. But what Isaiah described was the total opposite, a suffering servant. And that jarring contrast, well, that's the whole point. I mean, just look at this profile. It's a complete inversion of everything they expected. Instead of being celebrated, he's rejected. Instead of triumphing, he suffers. And his reign doesn't come through power, it comes through death. This wasn't just a different kind of hero. This was a complete redefinition of what heroism even meant. Okay, so how does this prophecy actually work? It's not just some vague prediction. It's actually built on a very specific, incredibly powerful theological mechanism that's embedded in the very grammar of the text. There's just no room to misunderstand what this servant came to do.
Just listen to the weight of these words from Isaiah chapter 53, verse 5. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The key to the entire thing is in that little phrase, for our. This is where everything changes.
The concept here is substitution. And let's be really clear, this isn't just empathy. It's not just feeling sorry for someone. It is a direct exchange. One person suffers the full, absolute consequence so that others don't have to. It's a direct life-for-life transfer.
And notice the language that's used all through the chapter. The grammar consistently shows this was something done to him. He was despised. He was crushed. He was cut off. This is so brilliant because it shows his suffering wasn't some tragic accident that happened to a victim. No, it was an act of intentional, willing surrender.
So all of this brings us to a really crucial understanding. This one passage, it acts like a master key. It unlocks the meaning of the entire biblical narrative. It creates this kind of pressure that forces the whole story toward one single, inevitable conclusion.
You can almost see this pressure building through the scriptures. Suddenly, all those animal sacrifices in the book of Leviticus, they look like foreshadowing, like incomplete placeholders for one final perfect sacrifice. The cries of suffering in Psalm 22 start to echo with this new prophetic meaning. Zechariah's prophecy of a pierced one steps right into the light. You see, the writers of the Gospels didn't invent some new idea. They recognized an ancient one that was finally being fulfilled right in front of their eyes.
And once you have Isaiah 53 as the blueprint, the cross stops looking like a tragic mistake or some plan that went horribly wrong. It becomes what it always was, an appointment, the inevitable fulfillment of this ancient, incredibly detailed prophecy.
So this brings up a massive question. How does a perfectly just God deal with sin? He can't just ignore it. He can't just excuse it. To do either of those things would compromise his very nature. So he does the unthinkable. He absorbs it. He takes the full weight of it himself. This isn't just being sentimental. This is ultimate moral seriousness.
And that leads us to the final and maybe the most uncomfortable part of this whole story, because the radical, humbling implications of what the servant did, well, they apply to every single one of us. It signals the absolute end of our self-sufficiency.
So, what do we contribute to this incredible act of salvation? What's our part in the deal? Well, this lays out the humbling verdict. Our only contribution is the guilt that made the rescue necessary in the first place. His contribution? Everything else.
And that right there is the definition of grace in its most radical form. See, grace isn't some divine assistance program where God helps you try a little harder. Grace is God stepping in to do for you what you could never, ever do for yourself. It is a complete and total rescue.
And this is exactly why this message can be so offensive. It's an offense to our pride. It humbles the strong. It silences the self-righteous. It looks at the most religious person on earth and says, even your very best efforts, they're not enough. You need a substitute. What this all boils down to is a profound reversal of how we think things should work. In God's kingdom, true redemptive love looks like a cross, long before it ever looks like a crown. The suffering has to come before the glory. Ultimately, the prophecy of the suffering servant does so much more than just explain history. It reveals the very heart of God. It shows us a love that is so profound, so complete, that it willingly enters into our brokenness, bears our guilt, and suffers our consequences, all just to make us whole.